Italy holds numerous records in Europe, both positive and negative. It is a country much loved by tourists, but not always by the Italians themselves, especially when it comes to politics and work. However, a good part of the European economy relies on the excellence of Italian products, even if this is sometimes not known. In this video we want to discover a bit of this wonderful and contradictory country, revealing 10 astonishing truths about Italy and Italians. Write in the comments if you know of any others. Welcome to this new video of Amazing Europe. Italy is one of the European countries with the largest presence of organized crime, as we have already seen in the dedicated video. When you think of crime in Italy, the mafia immediately comes to mind. But in reality, the mafia is not the only criminal group present in Italy, and it is not even the most powerful. Most scholars believe that the Sicilian mafia was born around the beginning of the 19th century. With the abolition of feudal privileges in 1812, the old Sicilian nobility abandoned the countryside to settle in the big cities, leaving the land properties to be rented by other people. These men, in order to make their fortune, made agreements with the bands of brigands and surrounded themselves with armed guards. Later these small societies imitated the rites and structures of the Masonic lodges. The Sicilian mafia was born. So the mafia has its origins in Sicily, but there are other very powerful criminal groups. We remember, for example, the Camorra in Campania, the Sacra Corona Unita in Puglia, and the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria. The latter is definitely the most powerful. The website of the Italian Parliament reports that one secret of the 'Ndrangheta's strength is the blood ties between many members of this group. The natural family and blood ties constitute a powerful protective shield. This is because, for a member of the 'Ndrangheta, confessing and denouncing criminals would mean accusing family members and relatives. This criminal organization is also present and operating outside of Italy. Powerful 'Ndrangheta families are also present in Germany, Canada, the United States, Australia, Venezuela, Colombia, and other nations. Currently, the 'Ndrangheta has a monopoly on the cocaine trade at the European level. Another widespread crime in Italy is tax evasion. Italy is the country with the highest level of tax evasion in the European Union. In 2019, €190.9 billion was evaded. Even when considering tax evasion calculated per capita, Italy is still in first place. In fact, in 2010, just over €3,100 per person was evaded. Italy also holds the record for the country in the European Union that evades the most VAT. In 2021, €60.6 billion was evaded in the European Union with VAT alone. Of these, €14.6 billion are attributable to Italy. However, things are improving significantly. For example, in the last year alone, Italy collected a good €31 billion that had been evaded. This tax evasion does not help the public debt at all. Italy has a truly enormous public debt. In December 2023, it had risen to around €2,863 billion. If €100 bills were lined up for every euro of debt, the line would stretch 11 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. It is much less than, for example, the public debt of the United States, but the seriousness of the situation can be perceived if we take into account the ratio between public debt and the nation's GDP. The European Union regulation states that public debt should not exceed 60% of its GDP. Currently 13 states exceed this threshold, and Italy is the second in Europe for this. In fact, in 2022 the debt exceeded GDP by 145%. Let's change the subject and talk about something beautiful that makes Italy unique. As we have already seen in the dedicated video, Italy is the country with the most UNESCO sites in the world. The first site to be recognized by UNESCO was the rock drawings in Val Camonica, in 1979. These are over 300,000 prehistoric engravings dating back to 8000 BC and depicting human figures, animals, hunting scenes, religious rituals and abstract symbols. This was just the first of 59 UNESCO sites, of which 53 are cultural sites and 6 are natural sites. For example, we can mention the town of Alberobello, with its characteristic houses. These are the so-called trulli, traditional dwellings with conical roofs. They are built using the dry stone construction technique, which means no mortar is used. The historic center of Florence is famous all over the world, as is Venice. Venice is also famous for the phenomenon of acqua alta, when the high tide threatens to submerge part of the city. This phenomenon is loved by tourists, but not particularly appreciated by the Venetians. But perhaps not everyone knows that in 2021 the MOSE system was put into operation. This is a system of mobile dams that can be raised to isolate the lagoon from the Adriatic Sea in case of high tide. It is not the definitive solution to the problem, but now the life of the Venetians is a little bit quieter. Let's talk about politics again, and let's talk about Italian governments. Italy's government is synonymous with instability. Since becoming a republic in 1946, Italy has had 68 different governments. According to the Italian constitution, a government mandate should last 5 years, but in reality, the average lifespan is less than 1 year and 2 months. There have been 31 different prime ministers, some of whom have served multiple terms, albeit of short duration. The prime minister who served the longest was Silvio Berlusconi, who governed for 4 terms, totaling approximately 9 years. The first woman prime minister is Giorgia Meloni, elected in October 2022. But who chooses these prime ministers in Italy? Not the people, but the president of the republic. So what does the Italian people choose? According to the Italian constitution, the people do not directly choose the prime minister or the president of the republic, but rather the parliament. This doesn't mean that all members of parliament are chosen by the people, but rather by political parties, who also select a certain number of parliamentarians. The remaining parliamentarians are chosen by the parties themselves. It's a rather complicated situation. Italy is the country with the oldest mothers in Europe. The average age at which women become mothers here is high. In fact, Italian women become mothers for the first time at 31.7 years old. The European Union average is 29.7 years, and the nation that does best is Bulgaria, where the first child arrives at an average of 26.6 years. The fertility rate is also among the lowest in Europe, with 1.24 children per woman in 2022. According to studies by the Italian National Statistical Institute, the motivation would not be cultural, since 98% of women of reproductive age without children say they want to have them. In Italy, unlike other countries such as Japan, the causes are said to be economic and social. The difficulty of finding work for young Italians and especially the possibility of losing it when pregnant play an important role in the choice of postponing the first child. In Italy, in fact, too many women leave or are forced to leave work after the birth of their first child. When their economic situation is more stable, Italian women are already in their 30s. But then we know that it is more difficult to have a child at an advanced age, and that is why they have fewer children. The Italian Statistical Institute says that in 1995 there was an even lower fertility rate, but Italy has recovered slightly thanks to the economic recovery and especially thanks to immigration, as foreign women in Italy had more children. And this brings us to the 7th curiosity that we tell you about. Italy is the country in Europe with the highest number of naturalizations, that is of foreigners who obtain Italian citizenship. According to Eurostat, in 2022 almost 214,000 foreigners became Italian. 21.6% of all naturalizations in the European Union in 2022 took place in Italy alone. This is a boom compared to the previous year, and you have to go back to 2016 to see naturalizations in Italy exceed 200,000. The new Italians are mainly Albanians, Moroccans and Romanians, but also Brazilians, Bangladeshis, Indians and Pakistanis. However, if you count how many foreigners have acquired citizenship per 1,000 inhabitants, Italy is no longer in first place. If you are curious to know which nation we are talking about, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to not miss the notifications, because we will make a video just on that. Italy is the second country with the most centenarians in Europe, and they are constantly increasing. There are about 19,700 centenarians, a number that has quadrupled in 20 years. Most of them live in the north of the country, and 83% are women. Italy is also home to one of the rare blue zones, that is a geographical area where life expectancy is significantly higher than the world average. This is the Ogliastra, a historical geographical region located in central eastern Sardinia. But what makes it possible for Italy to have so many people who live long? Obviously there are multiple factors, such as physical activity and daily work. In the Ogliastra, for example, especially in the past, shepherding was the most widespread activity and walking the slopes every day was an excellent physical exercise. Of course, scholars argue that it is also due to diet, as the Mediterranean diet is among the healthiest in the world. Obviously, the presence of many elderly people raises the average age. In fact, Italy has the oldest population in the European Union. In 2022, the average age of the population of the European Union was 44.4 years. Italy, on the other hand, has an average age of 46.8 years. Some of the characteristics seen so far cause a curiosity that we reveal about Italy. Italy is the country in Europe with the highest percentage of NEET men. NEET refers to young people who neither study nor work. In 2022, 17.7% of Italian men aged 15 to 29 were neither studying nor working. If we look at women instead, the primacy belongs to Romania, while Italy is in second place. The European average is 11.7%. The four Italian regions with fewer NEETs are Marche, Veneto, Emilia-Romagna and above all Trentino-Alto Adige. While the four regions with the most young people who neither study nor work are Puglia, Calabria, Campania and above all Sicily. In this wonderful island, 30% of men between 15 and 29 and 35% of women neither study nor work. But we shouldn't think that Italians are sitting on their hands. Far from it. Italians are on the podium in Europe for many positive aspects. For example, in 2023 Italy was the first European country and the second in the world for exports of textile, fashion, and accessories products. In fact, there was a turnover of 66.6 billion euros, although it is far from China which, with its 347 billion euros, firmly holds the first place in the world. 80% of textile exports come from Lombardy, Tuscany, Veneto and Emilia-Romagna. Italy is also the world leader in the production of mega yachts. The top two companies in the world in this sector are San Lorenzo and especially Azimut Bonetti, and both are Italian. Azimut Bonetti alone produces 14% of the world market in this sector. Until 2022, Italy was also the world's leading producer of wine for several years. In 2023 it produced 43 million hectoliters, and was overtaken by France. However, it remains the second in the world. Italy is also the second largest exporter of food processing machinery in the world, second only to Germany. Italians are also on the podium when it comes to environmental protection. For example, it is the first in Europe in waste recycling. In 2022, 83.4% of all Italian waste was recycled, compared to a European average of just 52.6%. Furthermore, Italy is improving in this aspect every year that passes. In the last 25 years, the amount of plastic recycled has increased from 228,000 tons to over 1 billion tons. Italians are truly an example for this and other things. These are 10 astonishing truths about Italy and Italians. Write in the comments what you think about what has been said, and if you know any curiosities about this wonderful country. In the meantime, we recommend other videos on this channel, such as the one on European countries with the highest crime rate. Well, that's all for this video. See you next time.